So we're here at the Tzion of the Nodeh Yehuda, and my hergish is that as a Chabura, we have the schus to learn and harva on the Torah and some of the complicated tshuvas of the Nodeh Yehuda. And we're here not just visiting a tzaddik, but we're visiting our Rebbe. Everyone knows what a goyin the Nodeh Yehuda was. But I think what not everybody realizes what a tzaddik the Nodeh Yehuda was as well. And I know that I was inspired by getting to know the ishiyut of the Nodeh Yehuda a little bit, and maybe just it's kedai to just share a few paragraphs, b'lishoina mazov shel haNodeh Yehuda v'talmidav ubanov, just to get a feel. I'm not saying anything on my own. It's literally reading verbatim, just different inyanim about who the Nodeh Yehuda was. So the Nodeh Yehuda had a son, Rav Shmuel Landau, whose tzion is right here. He was one of his successors after he passed away as one of the leaders of Prague. He also had a son whose name was Yaakivka. Yaakivka, my understanding, was Torah V'Gdula B'Makom Echad, and he actually paid to print Madura Tinyana of Shailas Chuvas Nodeh Yehuda. So the first Madura of Chuvas Nodeh Yehuda was printed during the lifetime of the Nodeh Yehuda. The second Madura was printed many years after he passed away, and it was printed by his son, Rav Shmuel Landau. In fact, there are 70 Chuvas in Madura Tinyana of Nodeh Yehuda that are Miben HaMechaber. They're from Rav Shmuel Landau. He was Masadir, and he included a lot of his Chuvas. So Rav Shmuel Landau worked on putting it together, and his brother Yaakivka was involved in the Gedula Chelik of it, in helping print it. And Yaakivka, because of his involvement in this project, wrote a Hakdama to Madura Tinyana of Nodeh Yehuda. And in his Hakdama, he talks obviously about his father. One of the things that he says is that the Nodeh Yehuda, when he was young, he was a Polisher, and he learned in Brod. And he learned in the Klois of Brod. The Klois of Brod was a famous Klois, where there were a lot of Lumdim, but it was uniquely famous because there was a big Makubal who was there during that time, whose name was Reb Chaim Sanzer. Not to be confused with the Divrei Chaim, but he was a very, very big Makubal. So Yaakivka writes that I heard from Reb Chaim Sanzer, and this is what he told me. He says, your father, you know, was a big goyin in learning, and you know what a manigi was, and what a gibar he was. But he said as follows, Hu haya omer, ki kol kisvei kodesh ala arizal, v'yeser sifrei kabbalah hamekubalim b'medina zu, gam ha'moyer nevuchim, elo churbu lo yachtav, v'yatmuna b'seiser knaf of Selah. He said he was a baki nifla in Torah Sasai, in the Torah of Dari, and in the Torah of the Moyer Nevuchim. He said, I met other people, older people that knew my father from the Klois, and haskenim shabadir hahu hayu oimrim hey maro maris Yecheskel bayom mahem, which was a play on the Nodeh Yehuda's name, Yecheskel. And he said there were mamish maris Yecheskel, the levels that he had reached in Soidas HaTorah and Chachmas HaNister was mamish ad lahafli. This is something I don't think people really know about the Nodeh Yehuda. He talks, Behemshech, the Hakdama, he says that the Nodeh Yehuda never really wanted to write any Svarim. We spoke about the Chasam Sofer, but he wasn't really high on his agenda. And then in the year Tov Kuf Lamed Hey, 1775, Lemesparon, Yotza Havara B'Shetach El Yom Beisai. There was a fire in the attic of his house. V'Atalaya To'esh, and this fire ravaged the attic. V'Atoichal Kol Svivav. Ubeis Dirosay Umedrashay Leishal To'esh. But he said his own house and his base medrash was spared. But Afal Pikein, however, Kol Ruchushay Hoylavaz. He said he lost all his Ruchush, Kesef, V'Kelim, Usmolois, V'Kisvei Kodesh, and he lost all his Kisvei Kodesh. And he says the Nodeh didn't care about the fire, he didn't care about losing all his Kelim. V'Loi Ogma Nafshay Kiyim Al Shailas Chuvas Harbe, V'Chidushay Gefes Ashen Nignavu Ve'enam. All of that was taken away. And then he realized that unless he's going to be matfis his Torah, a fire can come in 1 second, he can lose everything. So what he needs to do is he has to write, and he has to be matfis, and he's going to put his farm out. And like this, he knows that his Torah is going to have a kiyum. And he says the next year, Tov Kuf Lamed Vav, Hoitzi La'or Sifrei HaNodeh Yehuda. That one is when he put out his first sefer. One of the things he tells his brother, Rav Shmuel Landau, who's putting out now, Madura Tinyana, he tells him that I remember. He says when the Tata put out his first sefer, he was very, very makvid that the sefer, the chitzonius of the sefer should be beautiful. He says, in fact, everybody said at the time that in the history of the printing press, they never saw such a nice sefer. He said it was mamish beautiful. So he tells his brother, I know it's expensive, and it could be with the hitzais, you don't want to put and spend all this money on the sefer. He says, but you have to follow the way of your father. And he said, this is what the tata wanted, and if this is what the tata wanted, this is something that you're going to have to do. But Derech Agav, on the theme of Preshberg to Prague, which of course is what this whole Nasi has been about, so he writes that his father always told him that he had a dream to write a sefer on Masechtas Ksubas. That's what he wanted to write a sefer on. So in Yeshiva, we know Ksubas is Shas Katan, but he said he always wanted to write a sefer on Masechtas Ksubas. V'hoya Omer, he used to say that even though the Rav of Frankfurt, the Pnei Yeshua, already wrote a sefer on Masechtas Ksubas. And he said, Rav Pinchas Halevi Ish Horowitz wrote the Sefer Afla on Masechtas Ksubas. Im kol zeh oid emtza mokum ledavar davar. He felt they left over a little, he nichu mokum. And as a result, he wanted to write a Sefer on Masechtas Ksubas. And then he says, B'derech Agav, I just mentioned my father and the Hafla. He says, I have to tell you that whenever my father would hear the name of the Hafla, he said he would be maflig, b'chiba yisera v'ahava musteres b'kiro yisliba yatar. He had a riesige hergish for the hafla, of course, was the Rebbe of Chasam Sofer. But either way, just to get a little bit of a feel of what's going on here in the Hakdama, the Yaakivka, Benoishel, Agoyin Nodeh Yehuda wrote, just to bring out another hergish. So the Nodeh Yehuda's Rebbetzin, his name was Liba. She's buried here as well. So Nodeh Yehuda in his droshes, this is in Ahavas Tzion, it's on the new Tvos, it's under Hespedim Drush Samech Tes. So they printed Divrei Hesped that the Nodeh Yehuda gave on his own wife. He didn't say it at the time of the Levaya, but this was a Hesped that he had said at some later date, I'm assuming not too long after the Levaya. So he starts off and he says that when it came to the Levaya of his Rebbetzin, he couldn't be Maspeder. He couldn't physically be Maspeder. He said that the Pasuk says in Yirmiyahu, Kiru l'Mekoininus. Kadosh Baruch Hu says, call out to the Mekoininus that they should be Mekoinin and they should mourn the destruction of the Beis HaMikdash. So the Medrash in Eicha says that why did the Eibishter say Kiru l'Mekoininus? Quote, Kaviyachal Amar, the Eibishter said, Ein bi koyach l'koinin. Balachamish kan koyach to be Mekoinin. He said, the Churban, the Eibishter says, I can't. I physically cannot do it. So he said, Kiru l'Mekoininus. So then Yehuda said, that Misha Mesa Olav Eishes Nu'urim, the Gemara says in Sanhedrin Chavbezam and Alav Kilu Nechra Beis HaMikdash b'Yamav. It's as if the Beis HaMikdash was destroyed. So he said, when it came to the Rebbetzins Levaya, my hergish was, Ein bi koyach l'koinin. I couldn't. He said, I physically couldn't. This is the Gibar, literally, of the world. And he said he had no koyach to be Mekoinin. So what did he say? He said, Kiru l'Mekoininus. And I asked the Chavrei Bezdin, they should get up and they should be Mekoinin. And then he says something, Mamish, B'Lashoni Azaf. He says, Omnam. He says, all the people that got up to be Mechabed my Rebbetzin, Hem Ratzu l'Chabdeini. They wanted to be Mechabed me. V'lachein, hashvachim she'amru aleh, all the shvachim that they said about my Rebbetzin, hayu dvarim she'asa sayimi. It was all things that she did for me. When she was young, she would stay home by herself because I was always sitting and learning. And she was mamish waiting for me. This is interesting. She wanted to go with me to the Eretz HaKdosha. She said, they said about how she took care of me. He said, it's mamish, it's gewaldig, and it's emes la'mitoi. He said, but I didn't ask them to be maspid me. I wanted them to be maspid her. And he said, the emes is that even though, of course, an isha ksheir is oiser etzayim baila, and the fact that she gave up so much for her husband is taka so beautiful. But sometimes you have ladies that they're nice people, and they love their husband, and as a result, if their husband wants to do something, they're going to go along with it. But he said, I didn't feel that the hesped really brought out her Yiras Shamayim. Maybe she's just a good wife. She's baila. She's an isha ksheira. But how do you know that she's an isha chashuva? And how do you know she's an isha that's a Yiras Shamayim? He said, I didn't feel that they brought that out. He said, I felt like it was missing a little bit. And he said, I had a hergish. The pasuk says that after Sari Menu passes away, so Avram Avinu we know was by the Akedah, and he comes back and it says Vatomas Sara b'Kiryas Arba hi Chevron vayavay Avram lispoid l'Sara v'Levkoisa. So the Yehuda said, it bothered me, the pasuk. Vayovay Avram lispoid l'sara v'levkaisa. It said already Sarah. Vatama Sarah b'kiryas arba hi Chevron. Vayovay Avram lispoid l'sara tzim tzveitam v'levkaisa. It should have said Vayovay Avram l'soifta v'levkaisa. Why does it have to say again lispoid l'sara? So he says, ich stell mich vor that after Sarah Imenu was nifter, it's getting groise hespedim. Avram wasn't there yet. But what would the hespedim? Everybody probably got up and they talked about how Sarah, she was the Eza Kenegda, she was the Ishes Chayil. She literally was there on the side of her great husband. Avram Avinu came and he said, ich will nicht a hesped auf mir. I want a hesped on Sarah. Vayavay Avram lispoid l'Sarah v'lefgoisa. That was the hesped. He says, I'm going to be masped now, my wife, and I'm going to talk about who my wife was. He talks about her Yerushalayim, that it was Adla Hafli and the way she raised the children, and it's a beautiful, beautiful hesped. Just to see a little, maybe human side of the Nodeh Yehuda. He says as follows: he was married to his wife for 58 years. That's how long they were married. And he said that during those 58 years, Tamid b'chachmasa hoisa mishachechetz kasmi meni. He said, if I ever was bekas, she knew how to make me not be bekas. Va'omda al mishmeres shlo yizvadali dover asher yisavav li tzar ba'agmas nefesh. Nodeh Yehuda. He said she knew how to hide from me things that she knew that if I would know about this, it would give me tsar and agmas nefesh. She protected me from information and from news that I don't want to hear. V'tamid hoisa reidefes shlo yitzmach shum sinu machloikes beini ubein shum adam mekilaseinu. There's a rav of a big city and there's a lot happening. All the shuls we saw, there's a lot taking place. And she used to go out of her way to make sure that there would never be any machloikes. V'hoisa mefayeses hoisi b'dvarim. And she always knew how to tell me beautiful things. So he talks about her and then he fears ois. He says, these 58 years that he lived together with his wife, they were not shaykh. He said, sheker achein. That's not the ikr. Chein is 58. He said, sheker achein. Vehevel hayofi. The main thing he said that I want people to know is Isha Yiras Hashem Hitasala, that this was a woman that was in Yiras Shamayim. This is a little bit of different husband that the Nodeh Yehuda gave on his Rebbitzin. Zchusa Yogan Aleinu. Just to be Messiah. And that is, so we heard earlier about the Talmud Muvik of the Nodeh Yehuda, Rabbi Elazar Fleckless. Rabbi Elazar Fleckless was also masped the Nodeh Yehuda. And this was a hesped that he gave in the Klois Shul, which we're all Bikiyim now in Prague, so we know exactly where that shul is. It's the Beis Medrash of the Nodeh Yehuda. And La'achav Tirosnoi, he was masped in. It's a very, very long hesped. It's Jush Yud Zayin in Oilos Chodesh HaShlishi, and he says Dvorim Nufla Mamish about his Rebbe. But just a few paragraphs that I think it's Kedai L'Shmaya. He says, Kein ani yotzakti mayim al yodoi k'may eser shonim. He says, I was mishamish the Nodeh Yehuda for approximately 10 years. I know you're down about Uvdei. He says, I know inside information who the Nodeh Yehuda was. Hirbe betanisim v'sigufim ma'od. He was marbin tanesim and sigufim. You know, we always speak about the tshuva from the Nodeh Yehuda, Erechaim Simen Lamed Hey, where there was a person who did Averis, and he wants to do tshuva, and he writes to the Nodeh Yehuda, and he says that maybe Lamdenu Rabbeinu, maybe the Rebbe can give me different sigufim. And first the Nodeh Yehuda tells him, I understand you're a ben Torah, you're a bal tshuva. If you're learning Torah, you don't have to be oisik in these inyanim. But he wanted it badly. He says, oy bazoi. And then the Nodeh Yehuda goes and he mamish micromanages how much coffee he should have, and literally to the detail, to the nuance. So you see already the Nodeh Yehuda, he was megala tefach, that he was a little oisik in Binyani Sigufim. At least he understood the sugi a little bit. So he says, Hirbe betanisim v'sigufim ma'od. Mishivasa betamaz ad Rosh Chodesh Av. From Shivasa betamaz until Rosh Chodesh Av, loy achal davim min achai. Mirish Chodesh Av ad Tisha B'Av, loy achal rak lechem yavish, upizar efer al lechem. All he would eat is dry bread from Rosh Chodesh Av until Tisha B'Av, and he would put ashes on top of the bread. V'chein nag ad shehigia l'mei azikna. And this is what he did until he got old. He said, I witnessed it. Every single night, he would say, Tikkun Chatzois. He used to get 4 shiurim a day. Be'ela Masechta Zu, Be'ela Masechta Acheres, Be'ela Shulchan Aruch Zeh, Be'ela Shulchan Aruch Acher. And this is what he would do. He was oisik tremendously in his Talmidim. I'll just skip already towards the end. He says that he wanted to be mechazik the oilam a little bit. At the end of the hesped, this very, very long hesped that he gave, and he said, I'll be Messiah with one vart. Says the Gemara says in Masechta Shabbos, Daf Peches Amud Beis. We'll be Messiah with this as well. Amar Rabbi Shua ben Levi. B'shasha ola Moshe l'Amaray. When Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim to Mekabel the Torah, Amru Malachi Asharas l'Fnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. So Malachi Asharas told the Eibush, the Rebbeinu Shalom, Ma'ilud Isha Beinenu. What's a human being doing up? This is our place. What's he doing here? Amar Lehem l'Kabel Torah ba. He came to be Mekabel the Torah. Amru l'Fanav. So the Malachim told Hashem, Chamuda genuza, shegenuza lecha tough, kuf ayin dal of Torah is kodim shenivra oilam. Atem avakish litna lebasa v'dam. You're taking this Torah that's a chamuda genuza and you're giving it to a basa v'dam. Ma enosh kisis kirenu ven adam kisif gedenu. A human being has no shaykhis to the Torah. Amalei Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. So Kadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, hechselem tshuva, give them an answer. Amal lefanov, son. Moshe Rabbeinu told Hashem, I would give them an answer, but Misyari, I'm afraid, Shema Yisrafuni behevel shebepiyam. Maybe I'm going to get burnt with the smoke that's coming out of their mouths. Omar, the Eibishter told Moshe Rabbeinu, don't worry about it. Hold on to my kisei hakovid, v'chazer lehem tshuva, and then give them a tshuva. So the Rebbe Lazar Flakla said that the emphasis is ha'maimer hazehu maimer sosum, v'rabu svei koisav, and he lists like 10 kashas on this Gemara. But the teichen of the way he explains the Gemara is ba'ifan nifla. It says Moshe Rabbeinu went up to Shemayim to Mekabel the Torah. And the Malachim see Moshe Rabbeinu, he's a human being. A human being is vulnerable. A human being does averis. A human being struggles. And the thought was, why are you giving the Torah to human beings? Just like we understand the Torah wouldn't be given to behemoths and chayas. Why are you giving the Torah to human beings? It doesn't make any sense. The Torah belongs in Shemayim. So, and not just that, what is the Torah? It's a chamuda genuza, genuza lecha tough kuf ayin dal Torah is kodim shenivra oilam. It just makes no sense. So Moshe Rabbeinu turns to the Eibishter and he says, Eibishter, they're timing good. I don't know what to do. Amalei Kadosh Baruch Hu Moshe. It's like Kadosh Baruch Hu told Moshe, hechzer lehem tshuva. What you should do is you should tell them that it's true that people fall and people do averis and people have a yetzer hara. But Yid can also do tshuva. Tell them there's something called tshuva, and because there's something called tshuva, so memela we have a shaykhis to the Torah. Amar lefanov, when Moshe Rabbeinu turned to the Eibush, he says, very nice, we have tshuva. Could you compare a yid that doesn't have aver and then does tshuva to a malach that will never do an aver in his life? They have hevel shabapiyam. We don't have hevel shabapiyam. At the end of the day, it's very nice, we have tshuva, good, we can knock it out. But what shaykhis? Amar said, Eibush told Moshe Rabbeinu, what you should tell them is not only could we do tshuva, but you explain to them that when a yid does tshuva, he can reach a madrega that a malach can't reach. Because b'mokim shabali tshuvam oimdem ein tzadikim gemurim michaylam lamoid achois mikrisei kvoidi because gedoylo tshuva shemagas ad kisei hakovid. Explain to them where tshuva goes. Tshuva goes to the kisei hakovid, and because tshuva goes to the kisei hakovid, that's why we deserve the Torah, and it's not them that deserves the Torah. And this is be'erech, the way Rabbi Lazar Flaklis ended his hesped on the Nodeh b'Yehuda. But I'll tell you something fascinating, and there's no coincidences. I'll tell you a dover nifla ad l'ma'od. And that is, the Nodeh b'Yehuda, when he was nifter, because of issues with the Noitzrim, they couldn't be maspidin properly. So there was a spadin, but it wasn't a levaya that you would expect for Rabban Shel Kol B'nei Agoyla. And then they waited 10 days later, and 10 days later was when he had a proper hesped. And that was when Rabbi Lazar Flaklis gave this hesped. In fact, when Rabbi Lazar Flaklis began his hesped, he said that the Gemara says a person can bring a carbon, and he could bring the nesachim 10 days after he brings the carbon. Mikan v'ad asara yomim. And the first thing that Rabbi Lazar Flaklis said was that Klal Yisrael, when the Nodeh b'Yehuda was nifter, brought a carbon. Because Misa Tzadikim is mechaper, like Karbanis are mechaper. He says, and today, 10 days later, is when we're holding this hesped, and like the Gemara says, you could bring nesachim up to 10 days later. Today there's going to be nesachim. Today we're going to cry. It's going to be Nisach HaMayim. And today we're going to be Mekayim, the Indian of Nesachim. The Nodeh b'Yehuda was nifter on Yud Zayin Iyar. The Hespedim, as I state da, were on Chaf Avir, which is today. 230 years to the minute. It's when Rabbi Lazar Flaklis, whose scene is right there, was masped the Nodeh b'Yehuda, whose scene was standing in front right now. Zechusam Yagin Amen.